Every single day, Ontario loses about 319 acres of farmland.
Which is just a staggering number when you think about it.
Right. It really is.
Yeah.
But at the exact same time, you have municipalities across the province that are staring down this massive mandate to figure out how to build their share of 1.5 million new homes.
Yeah, the pressure is definitely on.
Totally.
Yeah.
So today we're looking at the town of Caledon, Ontario. And Caledon has essentially become, well, ground zero for this ultimate collision between the soil that feeds us and the concrete we apparently need to survive.
It's a massive structural friction. I mean, you have this sprawling, historically agrarian region, right? And it was entirely reshaped by provincial restructuring back in 1974. They reshaped it to cover this massive geographic footprint. And now here we are in 2026, and that exact same footprint is facing just an unprecedented wave of urbanization.
Yeah, exactly.
We are looking at how a town attempts to absorb hundreds of thousands of new residents while supposedly protecting the heritage and ecology that made people want to live there in the first place.
Right. And the sources we have on the table to unpack this are just fascinating. We're pulling from, dense municipal planning documents, some highly critical local journalism from The Pointer, and the actual lobbying letters submitted by developer consultants.
Those letters are revealing.
They really are. We even have the town's incredibly strict step-by-step rule book for how a citizen can actually speak at a council meeting. So our mission today is to understand the mechanics of all this growth. How does a farm actually turn into a subdivision, and who pulls the levers?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Okay, let's unpack this, because growth is usually talked about in the abstract, But we have a remarkably tangible example sitting right in front of us.
The Innis Lake project.
Exactly, the Innis Lake Secondary Plan.
Yeah.
Or, if you prefer the town's bureaucratic alphabet soup, PPA 2026-70007.
And we should probably decode that alphabet soup before we go any further.
Yes, please do.
So PPA stands for Provincial and Official Plan Amendment. Whenever a developer wants to build something that goes against the town's current master rule book, like maybe they want to build denser housing or turn agricultural land into a residential zone, they have to apply for a POPA to essentially rewrite that rule book.
Right. And the rewrite that Mattamy Homes is proposing here is staggering. I mean, they aren't just asking to build a subdivision, they want to build an entire mini-city.
Yeah, the scale is wild.
We are talking about a 1,000-acre master plan development that is over 400 hectares. They are designing it to house over 22,000 people, bring in 7,750 jobs, and build roughly 6,680 residential units.
And the breakdown of those units, it really tells you a lot about the modern planning mandate.
How so?
Well, they're aiming for 50% detached and semi-detached homes, 25% street townhouses, and the rest is split between stacked townhouses and apartments.
Okay, so a pretty big mix.
Exactly. And they're also mandating that 10% of those detached and semi-detached units must be constructed to accommodate secondary units. Think like garden suites or basement apartments to help with affordability. Yeah, the developers are baking density and diverse housing options into the blueprints literally from day one.
I mean, it feels exactly like someone playing SimCity. Just dragging a massive residential zone over an agricultural map and hitting build.
That's a great way to put it.
But wait, how does a developer just declare they are ready to construct a city of 22,000 people right now? Don't municipalities have 25-year schedules for this kind of thing?
They do. It is exactly like SimCity, except the cheat codes are written by planning consultants.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. This comes down to the mechanics of what Caledon called its Growth Management and Phasing Plan, or the GMPP.
The GMPP. Okay.
Right. This is essentially the town's formula for deciding what land gets urbanized in Phase 1, which is roughly, 2026 to 2036, and what gets pushed into the waiting room of Phase 2, which looks way out to 2051.
So Mattamy actively maneuvered to get Innis Lake into Phase 1.
They absolutely did. We have the 2024 lobbying letter from their planning consultants, Malone Given Parsons, and they didn't just ask nicely,
Yeah, they brought receipts.
Exactly. They systematically proved they hit every metric on the town's GMPP rubric. They argued that Innis Lake is the most logical extension of existing infrastructure because it directly abuts the currently built-up area along Mayfield Road.
Oh, so you don't have to leapfrog over miles of empty farmland just to run water and sewer lines.
Precisely. And furthermore, they pointed out that plopping over 6,000 homes right there creates the exact ridership density required to justify the future Caledon Go transit station.
Ah, so it feeds the transit goals, too. And they also heavily leveraged their own market dominance, right? Because the letter points out that since 2010, Mattamy has built 40% of all single detached and townhouses in Caledon.
Yeah, that's a massive stat.
But wait, isn't that a monopoly issue? Like, if a single developer controls nearly half of your town's housing supply, does the municipality even have the leverage to say no to them?
Well, that is kind of the quiet part out loud in municipal politics. When a town is under a strict provincial mandate to build a certain number of homes by a specific deadline, they become highly dependent on developers who have a proven track record, the ones who can actually get shovels in the ground.
That makes sense.
Mattamy was essentially reminding the town, look, you have quotas to hit, and we are the machine that helps you hit them, prioritize our land. And, well, it worked. The 1,000 acres gets prioritized.
Okay, so Mattamy is speeding ahead in the Phase 1 VIP lane. But what happens if your land isn't in that lane?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right, and here's where it gets really interesting. Because that brings us to the 9,000 acres and this massive zoning controversy dominating the local news covered by The Pointer.
Oh, the Whitebelt controversy.
Yes, the town is proposing a zoning suffix called Future Development, or FD, and they want to blanket 9,000 acres of Whitebelt land with it.
For context on the geography here, for everyone listening, Whitebelt is the unofficial term for land that sits outside the heavily protected provincial greenbelt, but inside the town's settlement boundary.
So it's sort of the waiting room for development.
Exactly. It is, by definition, the land earmarked for future urban expansion. Now, the town's perspective on applying this FD label to existing agricultural A1 zones is entirely about transparency.
Transparency? How so?
They are trying to signal to the market, to current owners, and to prospective buyers that this land will be urbanized by 2051. They want people making financial decisions with their eyes wide open.
I mean, it sounds like the town is putting a condemned or, like, moving soon sign on 9,000 acres of perfectly good working farmland just to warn future buyers.
That's certainly how the critics see it.
Yeah, advocacy groups like Democracy Caledon and former provincial planner Victor Doyle argue it's wildly premature. And the backdrop to this is super vital.
The strong mayor powers.
Exactly. In 2024, Mayor Annette Groves utilized provincial strong mayor powers to unilaterally fast-track development approvals for roughly 35,000 homes.
Which was incredibly controversial.
Highly controversial. That bypassed traditional council consensus and created this deep, lingering mistrust among residents. Now, locals view this FD label not as a helpful warning, but as a mechanism to basically lock in the destruction of farmland decades before a single house actually needs to be built.
The mistrust is palpable for sure, but the consequences of this FD label go far beyond just philosophical debates about the future.
Right, there are practical impacts.
Huge ones. There are immediate, highly bureaucratic impacts on the people living and farming that land today. A former town councilor, Ian Sinclair, highlighted a deeply obscure but incredibly consequential piece of legislation. It's Ontario Regulation 30503.
Okay, 30503. How does a provincial regulation from 2003 impact a farmer in Caledon today?
It dictates the rules for issuing building permits. Under this regulation, a municipal chief building official is legally required to ensure any new permit complies with all, quote, applicable law.
Okay.
If the town slaps an FD suffix onto a working farm, the zoning suddenly dictates that any new structure must consider long-term planning objectives.
Meaning, it can't get in the way of a future subdivision.
Precisely. Let's say a farmer on that A1 FD zoned land needs to build a new silo, or a homeowner wants to put an addition on their house.
Just standard upgrades.
Right. They go to the town for a standard permit. But now the building official has to look at the master plan and ask, will this new silo block a future 4-lane road that might be built here in 2045?
Wow.
The official's hands are tied by provincial law, so the permit gets delayed, subjected to massive engineering reviews, or denied outright.
That essentially freezes the property in time. I mean, if you can't modernize a farm, you can't run a farm.
Sinclair points out it even impacts financing.
Really?
How? Imagine going to a bank to secure a 25-year mortgage or an agricultural loan for heavy machinery. The bank's risk assessment sees that your collateral is officially flagged by the municipality for redevelopment.
Oh, so they won't lend to you.
It dries up capital. The FD label slowly snarves the agricultural viability of the land decades before the developers even show up.
That is wild. So what is physically sitting on those 9,000 acres right now? Because we aren't just talking about empty dirt waiting for concrete.
Not at all.
The environmental realities detailed in the sources are honestly grim. This specific swath of whitebelt habitat supports at least 20 at-risk species.
Yes.
That includes 5 federally threatened species and 3 endangered species.
What's fascinating here is how we have to look at how environmental protection actually functions on the ground in 2026. Former planner Victor Doyle points out that structural changes to the Endangered Species Act have created a framework he refers to as pay to slay.
Pay to slay. I mean, that is a highly loaded term. Walk me through the actual mechanics of how that works. How does a developer encounter an endangered species and just, like, keep building?
Well, historically, if a developer surveyed a plot of land and found the habitat of an endangered species, say, a specific nesting ground, the presence of that species would force a massive redesign.
Right, they'd have to work around it.
Exactly. They would have to build around it, preserve the corridor, or potentially abandon the site altogether. But the framework Doyle is criticizing changes that calculus.
Okay.
Instead of redesigning the physical blueprint to avoid the habitat, the developer can calculate the footprint of the destruction and simply pay a financial fee into a provincial compensation fund.
Wait, really? So they just write a check, the bulldozers roll right over the habitat, and the money goes where?
Well, in theory, the money funds environmental compensation elsewhere in the province.
Elsewhere.
Yeah. It might go toward researching the species or purchasing and protecting a similar habitat in a totally different municipality.
But the net result for Caledon is that the local biodiversity is permanently paved over. Are we essentially trading food security and biodiversity for housing security? Because looking at the raw data, the scale of this trade-off is massive.
That is the central agonizing dilemma facing every growing municipality in the province right now.
Yeah.
You have two entirely valid, legally mandated, yet fundamentally contradictory imperatives colliding. On one side, you have the provincial push to build complete communities.
Like Innis Lake?
Yes, the Innis Lake project is designed with mid-rise urban corridors, transit hubs, neighborhood centers. This is exactly what modern urban planners demand to prevent the sprawling, car-dependent, environmentally disastrous suburbs of the 1990s.
Right, they need density.
They do. But density still requires land. And on the other side of the collision, you have a massive push from local advocates and politicians like Ontario Green Party leader Mike Schreiner, who introduced Bill 21, the Protect Our Food Act.
Right, the food belt idea.
Exactly. They are demanding the creation of a permanent food belt, a legally protected zone similar to the Green Belt that would permanently shield Class 1 through 3 agricultural lands from any development.
And their argument is based on a really bleak reality, which we mentioned earlier. Ontario is losing those 319 acres of farmland every single day.
Yeah.
The Whitebelt land in Caledon isn't just generic dirt. Much of it is prime, Class 1 to 3 agricultural soil. It is literally the most productive land in the country.
It is. And the advocates argue that you cannot claim to be building a sustainable province if the prerequisite for your housing is the permanent destruction of the very soil that feeds your population.
That's quite the paradox. So, with massive irreversible decisions happening on this scale, 1,000 acres handed to Mattamy here, 9,000 acres flagged for future urbanization there, how does a normal citizen actually interact with this machinery?
It's tough.
Like, if you live in Caledon and you want to push back on a POPA, or maybe you actually want to support a development to get housing costs down, how do you get your voice heard?
You have to navigate the heavily regulated mechanics of local democracy. And looking at the town of Caledon's own instructions for public meetings, participation is designed to be highly structured and, frankly, exhausting.
It's exhausting just reading the agendas, honestly. There are endless applications. We talked about PPAs, but there are also RZ's rezonings, where a developer just needs to change the use of a specific lot from, say, commercial to residential.
Right.
Just keeping track of which acronym applies to the farm down your street requires a degree in municipal planning.
Oh, completely. And when you do decipher the agenda and decide to engage, the rules of the room are incredibly strict. The Speak at Council document outlines the reality pretty clearly.
What are the rules?
Well, you cannot just show up to town hall and raise your hand. You must register in advance to be an official delegate. You have to submit all your written materials, presentations, and arguments by a strict deadline, usually the Monday prior to the meeting.
Wow. And when you finally get through the registration and you step up to the microphone in the council chambers, you have exactly 10 minutes to speak.
10 minutes.
10 minutes to argue the ecological fate of 9,000 acres or the infrastructure strain of a 1,000-acre megaproject.
10 minutes, and you are bound by strict rules of decorum. You cannot debate the council members. You are simply there to state your case for the public record before the machinery moves forward.
That's intense.
It is. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, this procedural reality is exactly why local zoning matters to you, the listener. National politics get the headlines, they provide the entertainment and the broad ideological battles.
For sure.
But the physical world you walk through every day, your commute, your local parks, whether you look out your window and see a farm or a high-density transit corridor, all of that is decided in these hybrid town council meetings in 10-minute increments.
So what does this all mean? We have covered a tremendous amount of ground today. We looked at the Innis Lake mega project, where a developer utilized their massive market share and infrastructure logic to basically jump the queue and prioritize 1,000 acres for a new city.
Yep.
We explored the 9,000-acre Whitebelt battle, uncovering how a simple future development zoning suffix triggers provincial regulations that can financially strangle a working farm today.
And we unpacked that pay-to-slay framework.
Right. Highlighting the agonizing trade-off between building the dense housing we desperately need and paving over the at-risk species and Class 1 farmland we really rely on.
To wrap this up, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over regarding that tension.
Okay, let's hear it.
When you read the master plan for the Innis Lake project, it legally mandates the creation of complete communities. It requires integrated trail systems, walkable schools, mixed-use commercial spaces, and highly sustainable net-zero energy buildings. It is, by all modern architectural metrics, the blueprint for a perfectly sustainable urban future.
It is exactly what we are told we need to be building.
But if the foundational requirement for building this new, perfectly planned, sustainable community is the permanent destruction of centuries-old, Class 1 farmland, the exact ecosystem that naturally sustains us, can we ever truly call that community complete?
Oh, wow. That is a phenomenal question. And it is the exact paradox every growing municipality is going to have to confront. From the lush, endless green fields of the 1820s to the complex, deeply bureaucratic zoning wars of 2026, the friction between what we build and what we bulldoze isn't going away anytime soon.
Definitely not.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We highly encourage you to go look up your own local town council agenda this week, decode the acronyms, look at the zoning maps, and you might be surprised what is quietly slated for your own backyard.